I never saw that one coming, me starting to cry reading my own book, but I haven't read this in a long time, and when I first wrote it, I actually dictated it. I had broken my leg in a judo tournament, and I was in bed because I had a knee operation, and I decided to tell my story. And I really did some serious bawling then. So I never saw that coming, but I'm sure I'm going to do it as we proceed. Jimmy and I constantly played Marines. I was finally able to convince him to be a Jap. Otherwise, he wouldn't come with me to the cat lot, which was a block away where we played every day. Life was simple. Nothing seemed to bother him as long as we could play together. Once, I convinced him to be a paratrooper and tied 2 square pillows on his back and the other 2 is behind, like in the movies when they were jumping out of planes, assuring him, of course, that the parachute would open when he jumped from the 2nd-story front window. He did.
Oh my goodness.
Thump. Not a scratch, but boy did I get it. Uncle Charlie beat the hell out of my behind to remind me not to teach my brother to do stupid things. He was the duty spanker now that the other uncles were all off to the big war. He was a well-known Philadelphia lawyer and an important political guy. He was the last person I can remember that could actually scare the crap out of me. In general, punishment meant banishment upstairs. Spanking didn't happen very often. I'm not implying that, but I do remember once upon a time it was the thing I was actually scared of. One rainy afternoon while playing doctor by myself in the upstairs bathroom, I filled the medicine bottles in the cabinet with water to pretend they were different medicines. And when done, I poured the water out, screwed on the tops, and put them away. Uncle Charlie got up the next morning and reached for the aspirin.
Oh,
it was all dried out and caked together, and it was the entire cabinet was full of pills were all that way. I could hear him coming after me with a belt. I tried to hide, but he found me under the bed and hided me real good. I screamed for my mother. She was just getting in from a night shift as a nurse at the Chestnut Hill Hospital. She took me into the backyard and comforted me, sitting in her lap in a big chair. There's a picture of us at that very moment around someplace. One of my kids has it, I think.
Mm.
It's the only pictorial image I have of her to this actual day. I lost my emotional connection with everyone I ever knew the day she died. I was trained emotionally from that day forward to be independent. Her death broke my emotional connection with the only person I ever trusted then or since. I learned the hard way over my lifetime this was going to be true. Only recently did I hear the true facts behind my mother's death. I was always told by the Deweys that she died as a result of an auto accident, and I wrote that version in this book the first time around. The whole family read the manuscript. I gave it to everybody beforehand, and no one ever peeped a word. I gave each of them a manuscript to review for truth and veracity. I gave it to Uncle Bill. He handed it back after about a week with no comment. I gave it to all the uncles and aunts who were alive at the time. None squealed. 2 years ago, I was visiting my mother's sister, my actual foster mother, my Aunt Bert. After she had a few pops of her favorite libation, she acknowledged, "Nah, it wasn't an auto accident, Tommy. Your mother had a stroke at a party on Saturday night. She was admitted to the Chestnut Hill Hospital a few days later and then released. She then died of a massive stroke at home in bed a few days later." I always remembered being in bed with her when she died, and had also written that fact in my first book. Everyone I showed the manuscript to denied it ever happened. My old auntie finally squealed. I'm not real sure she even remembered telling me, but she said, after a few beers with the insurance agent, Mom, which she called her my grandma, sitting in the kitchen after the funeral for your mother, convinced the agent it was an auto-related incident and insisted the company pay double indemnity accidental death coverage according to the policy to help pay for the 2 orphans' future. That's the truth. That's what actually happened, and I didn't find that out till 2 years ago. The scam worked. I never knew the real story, and our Dewey clan went along with it all those years. Imagine that for Irish clan loyalty. As I remember, there was a big crowd at my mother's funeral, standing around the open casket with lots of flowers and relatives and friends all crying. Pop showed up and sat in the corner, crying all by himself. No one spoke to him. I sat in his lap. All the St. Joe's nuns from Holy Cross Parish showed up and patted me on the head with tons of sympathy. I'm telling you the truth. I never felt any sadness and was not crying, and I had no idea why they were crying. The death of Mommy did not register until much later, when I started pooping my pants every day at school and hiding the soiled underpants all over the house behind things. Finally, the war was over. Uncle Bill sure cried when he came home from the war. From 44 straight months, got back to combat duty in the South Pacific. He was island hopping from Guadalcanal to Japan as a U.S. Marine grunt. And his favorite sister, my mother, and Grandma never told him about her death. After crying about his younger brother Ray, killed on the 4th day of Iwo Jima by machine gun fire while tugging another wounded Marine to safety, I remembered when he looked around after all the hugging and saying, "Where's Han?" Everybody lost it, even me. I learned it was all right to cry that day. Even tough Marines cry. Uncle Bill brought home a big sea bag. It was filled with Japanese flags, knives, all sorts of military-type hats, goggles, old, smelly, and moldy, but unbelievable evidence of war trophies. Real Japs wore this stuff once. Uncle Bill killed them to avenge Uncle Ray. I always wondered why anyone would want to kill a paper boy. Soon Uncle Bill became a basket case. Crying was in, laughing was out. Talk about confusion. Everyone happy he came home and everyone crying because he came home. It was a tough time for the little kids around Grandma Dewey's house after the war was over. Drinking was an ordinary Irish family sport. I can't remember when the Dewey clan was not drinking, especially after the war ended, and it seemed everyone in the whole world was drunk on that particular day. The first gold. Grandma got the first gold. She hung a flag with a gold star on it in the front window. People called her a Gold Star Mother. She was always proud of that gold star and her gold lapel pin. It was a mark of distinction and admiration, a gold badge of courage for ladies, evidence that their son was dying for freedom and for our country. My first glimpse of the gold star was at Uncle Ray's first funeral. They had a second one for him after the war was over, when his body was returned from Iwo Jima and the smoke of the battle had cleared and the war was long gone. I remember the large purple heart and the gold flag and the star, all made from gorgeous gold flowers. I remember the U.S. Marines who arrived as all spit polished, dressed in red, white, and blue uniforms, with rifles that they fired in unison over Uncle Ray's casket at the cemetery, on the same Dewey plot where Mommy was buried. Crying was a real big thing that day. Even Marines in their dress blue uniforms cried when the Marine Corps' sergeant played taps, and it vibrated hauntingly throughout the cemetery. The next session will be Chapter 2, and it'll be when I was moving away from my grandma's house in Mount Airy. Thank you very much.